Good morning and welcome to our Economic Summit, the 28th Annual Economic Summit. And we're really happy to have this today. We're happy to be in person. We're happy to have these wonderful panels to my left in one place. So we're very happy with that. Before we begin, I do want to thank a few people that are in the room. I want to thank our board members. Our board members have been our backbone of the HIA-LI, and they have been, through COVID, they have really stepped up and they have gotten us where we are today. So I'm going to ask our board members to stand. I want to give them a round of applause. I know we have, we got board members there, and we have board members to my left. I also want to thank our sponsors. You know, sponsors enable us to really raise the level of any program. So I'm going to thank our sponsors, and then I'm going to ask a couple to come up and make a couple of comments. But I want to thank the Catholic Health System. I want to thank Dime Community Bank. I want to thank Farrell Fritch PC. I want to thank H2M Architects and Engineers. I want to thank the Habitat of the Humanity of Suffolk, soon to be Habitat of Humanity of Long Island. I want to thank Mark Grossman, People's Alliance Federal Credit Union, PKF O'Connor Davies, PSEG Long Island, and Sandler Training and Sastris and Company. So if we can give them all a round of applause. And we also have some partners that work with us. So I want to give a shout out to Astoria, which is in the back right there. I want to give a shout out to Bob Giglione. He's here with his camera somewhere. And SignWave, who makes all the signage for us. So thank all our partners. Now I'm going to ask a couple people to come up to the mic to make a couple of remarks. And then I'm going to recognize the dignitaries that we have in the room. So first, I want to ask Mr. O'Shaughnessy, who's well known and loved and known as Dr. O of Catholic Health, to come up and make a couple of remarks.
Sure, wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Anthony, thanks so much for having me. Terry as well. It's great to be here with all of you this morning and to sit amongst such an esteemed group of panelists. So thank you so much. So we're thrilled to partner with you here at Catholic Health. Healthcare is changing, and it's exciting. We'll always still focused on delivering the very best care to those that are sick or ill, but we're also pivoting the way we deliver care to focus on well care, to help you stay healthy. Now, you may know of our organization from one of our outstanding hospitals, whether it be St. Francis, Mercy, St. Joe's, Good Sam just south of us, St. Catherine's just north of us, and St. Charles. We're also a physician network of over 2,200 providers, providing services from cradle to grave. We're focused on equity. We're focused on improving the health of the population. And that's how I believe we could work together to help better serve your companies and all the communities we serve. You see, I believe in not rationing care, but rather to deliver exceptional value of care. And that means the right care in the right place at the right time by the right people. That's what we do. We're faith-based as well. We do things differently. We focus on the entirety of the person. And I'm very excited to work with all of you and your companies to help improve the health of your employees and the health of the populations we serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now I'd like to call up the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Lee Zillman. He's right there. Okay.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, everyone. Today you will hear from our esteemed panel about economic potential here on Long Island. I'm sure all of us will be inspired by what they have to say and about what I assume will be optimistic forecasts of the economic future for Long Island. While all of us believe that Long Island is a great place to live, work, and own a business, it is important to realize that in the midst of this great economic engine, there is an affordable housing crisis on Long Island. Currently, over 50% of all families on Long Island are housing burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on rent or mortgage and taxes. An astonishing 20% of all families, that's 1 in 5, spend over 50% of their income on rent. When a family spends 50% of their income on rent, there's barely enough money for food and no money for health care or other necessities. These families are just one unplanned event away from economic disaster. At Habitat for Humanity of Suffolk, our mission is to put God's love into action to bring people together, build homes, communities, and hope. And our vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. Habitat for Humanity offers home ownership possibilities to families that earn between 40% and 60% of average median income. We are the only organization that offers home ownership possibilities to families that earn in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $70,000 a year. Who are these people? They're your classroom aides, your healthcare aides, volunteer firemen, EMTs, data processors, warehouse and factory workers. As I only have a minute this morning to talk, I won't tell you, explain exactly how we do what we do and how we're able to accomplish this, other than say that Habitat is a partnership between government, business, our volunteers, and our families. If you want a corporate team building activity like no other, please consider building with us and becoming a sponsor for a day, helping us to improve low and moderate income communities on Long Island. Please see me or a member of my staff after today's program if you'd like to learn more about Habitat for Humanity of Suffolk and how you can help us help Long Island.
Thank you, Lee. Now I want to recognize, we have many dignitaries that are in the room, so I want to recognize a few of them right now. I'm going to ask them to stand. You could hold your applause to the end. I know you won't. You'll clap as I mention them, so that's fine. We have New York State Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick joins us today. We have Legislator Stephen Floriton, Legislator Leslie Kennedy, Suffolk County Comptroller John Kennedy. We have Isom Town Supervisor Angie Carpenter, Brookhaven Town Supervisor Ed Romaine, Suffolk County Regional Rep for Governor Kathy Hochul, Jacqueline Roth is here. Long Island Regional Director of Senator Gillibrand, Michael Schneid is here. And Long Island Regional Assistant for Senator Gillibrand, Maheen Khan is here. And one of our most valuable partners, President and CEO of Discover Long Island, Kristen Reynolds is here. So let's all give him a round of applause. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce the President and CEO of the HIA-LI, and we'll start this program off, Terry Alisi Misselli.
So let's give Anthony a round of applause in pronouncing those names. Let's just do that, yeah? So let me first say, it is great to see everybody live. It is really great to pump fists and do the elbow thing and do the hug, the bear hug thing. Really, it's really great to be back, number one. I realize I am the only thing between you and this esteemed panel, so I will be very quick this morning. We have partnered for many, many years with AVZ on this economic survey and opinion poll, and now obviously PKF O'Connor Davies. So we're extremely fortunate really to look at what these CEOs are saying on Long Island and how they feel about the future. Number one, it's been a rough 2 years. We know that. Many of you, as we've talked to you through the 2 years, have told us several things. Number one, well, I'm just curious in the group, how many are optimistic about the future? Show of hands. If you do not raise your hand, sissy on all of you, yes. So, and that's really what our members are telling us. You're cautiously optimistic about the future. You'll hear a lot more about it in this survey. And see a light at the end of the tunnel, number one. You've said that you have several concerns, particularly over the next year. Number one, access to capital. So, when we talk about access to capital, that can obviously mean access for infrastructure projects, and there are many great ones going on Long Island. That can mean small business loans. That can be, loans for mergers and acquisitions, and many of the things that we're seeing today. Number two, we have understood probably more clearly than ever before how important technology is, right? So for those of us who were working remote and some of us who continue to work remote, we know that technology is here. It is here to stay. It is part of our business, whether we like it or not. It is part of our business, right? Number three, you're looking at how do you create a real viable talent pool, and that's a huge challenge. So this morning we'll talk about how do we better connect education to business and look at some other areas for you to get qualified workers. And number four, health issues. I mean, Dr. O talked a little bit about what's going on. You'll hear a lot more about it. And particularly, by the way, mental health issues, right? So we've talked about in our school districts as well as in our businesses, mental health. I think it gives us an opportunity and responsibility as leaders to understand we have to be far more compassionate than we've ever been and far more hands-on than we've ever been. So again, this survey really takes a pulse on not only what's going on now, but what's going on in the future. And we're extremely fortunate to have this group of esteemed panelists who would not only interpret the survey in terms of their industries, but talk a lot about, what they feel the future is in those industries. So help me welcome up our moderator. Many of you know him. He is a very valued HIA-LI board member. He is our treasurer as well. So he keeps us going, yeah? We met yesterday. We're in good shape. I'm excited about that. He is with PKF O'Connor Davies, Mr. Bob Corte.
Thank you, Terry. And good morning. Again, my name is Bob Corte. I'm really pleased to be here again this morning. And as Terry said, it's really great to be here live. After a couple of years of doing this virtual, it's really nice to see some new faces, some familiar faces, and it's really exciting for me. So I'd like to thank Terry for inviting me back. And as you may be aware, this is the 27th anniversary of the Long Island Economic Survey and Opinion Poll. When we began the survey, we didn't think that we'd get this kind of support and never anticipated the positive responses we would receive over the years. So I want to thank each of you for your participation, whether you simply answered the survey, make use of the data, or simply here to network and be part of the program. On behalf of the HIA-LI, thank you for your support. At this time, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Don Levy, Director at Siena College Research Institute, to present an overview of the PKF O'Connor Davies survey. Dr. Levy?
Thank you very much. It's fabulous to be here. I echo everyone else's sentiments to be here in person. For 15 years, we've been conducting a business leader survey across all of upstate New York. And I think I'm going to be a little bit of repetitive because I'm going to talk about some of the differences between Long Island and upstate in this presentation. And upstate, we still did it virtually. So I was on one of those monumental Zooms the other day presenting these results to your colleagues across upstate. I'd like to thank PKF O'Connor Davies for their support on the project and for asking Siena to be involved this year, and we hope for many years to come. I'd like to thank HIA-LI for inviting me to come and speak. Many of you, and really it's a pleasure to have so many members of New York State politics here in the audience, because that's what a lot of people know us at Siena for. As you know, we conduct regular polling on the state of New York's, the sentiment of New York voters towards various political issues. We'll be out this Monday with another political study. But also, I invite you to visit our website because we also research and poll on important issues such as free speech, American values, and of course, economic issues at all times. So let's try to dive into the study. We ask a series of 4 questions in which we asked the 270 CEOs here in Long Island that we spoke to. The survey was conducted between just before Thanksgiving to right after New Year's. So I will have a couple of seconds to talk about some of the impacts potentially of the recent political and economic changes since we completed the survey. But we asked CEOs to think about current overall economic conditions and compare them to a year ago. Very simple question: are they better or are they worse? And here on Long Island, the CEOs, 59%, a decided majority, say that at present economic conditions have improved. And when they are asked to look forward, that show of hands seemed to be representative, because 61% told us that they expect economic conditions to improve over the coming year. To give you a little bit of perspective, upstate, and we interviewed over 650 CEOs across upstate, whereas on Long Island, 59% said things were better, upstate 29% said the conditions had improved. Where here on Long Island, you told us at the rate of 61% that you would expect bettering conditions over the course of this year. Upstate, your colleagues represented at 36%. So a dramatic difference in sentiment, which is really reflective of two different economic environments. We also asked CEOs to think about specifically within their industry, because we know that CEOs have a better sense, a more complete sense of what's going on within their industry. And there you see that 50% of CEOs describe conditions as having improved within their industry over the last year, and their expectations slightly lower than across the entire economy, but 56% anticipate bettering conditions in the year ahead. Again, and I saw a couple of faces that seem to be surprised at this. When you compare these numbers to upstate, whereas 50% feel as though conditions have improved within their industry, that number is 28% upstate. Whereas 56% of you expect bettering conditions within your industry, that number upstate is 37%. So I'm sure many of you do business upstate, and I think you need to anticipate when you work with your friends in Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, et cetera, that they live in a slightly different climate than the climate that you're representing. Over the course of this survey, there was an attempt with using just one question to come up with one composite score between 0 and 10 to place the economic confidence of CEOs on a scale that was easily understood. This is looking at this over the course of the entire survey. What we did is we took those 4 questions and we combined them into a single measure, and we normalized it. I'll use a few words to remind you of your college statistics courses. And we normalized it to a single number. So we were happy to report that the economic confidence here on Long Island has increased to a 6.8 out of a possible 10. Again, to give that a little perspective, what we do, we take those 4 numbers, those 4 questions, we combine it using what's called a diffusion index into a single score, where a score of 100 would indicate that optimism and pessimism are balanced. The upstate score this year is 94, so slightly below where optimism and pessimism would balance, up from where it was a year ago. If we normalize the scores here on Long Island on that same scale, your score here would be 136. So decidedly more optimistic when you measure those 4 questions that ask CEOs to assess current economic conditions compared to a year ago, their expectations for the year ahead, and they look at their own industry. So a score of 136 compared to a score of 94 upstate. So a significant difference. Let's look at some of the particulars. We asked CEOs to think about their revenue and profitability in the year ahead. 61% of you said that you expect your revenues to increase as the pandemic drawing to a lessening level, we'll say. So 61% of you, upstate, that number is 47. And when I presented these numbers upstate, I told them that their projection for revenue had increased, whereas a year ago, only 34% upstate expected increasing revenue. Now 47, you're at 61. we're walking up a certain ladder. When you look at profitability, a majority, 51% of you, anticipate increasing profitability in the year ahead. So there is a really pervasive sense of optimism here on the island. Upstate, that number is 36%. When we look at some of the challenges that you reported that you face, I will note also, we asked another question about fixed asset acquisition. Do you intend to invest in your business this year? Again, a very important economic indicator, and certainly it's an indication that many of you will be reaching out to your financial institutions perhaps for funding for some of these fixed assets. But 55% of you indicated that you do intend to invest in fixed assets, trucks, equipment, computers, machinery for your business this year. What about some challenges? We still see at the point at which we took the survey, you'll have to remember that Omicron was raging at the time that we took the survey. Over half cited the continuing impact of COVID as something that you were felt challenged by. Adverse economic conditions, read inflation, is something that 53% of you at that point said you were challenged by. I think if we did that question today, we would see an increase, and I'll have a minute to talk about that. Rising supplier costs is something that has driven concern up amongst CEOs. I'll call attention near the bottom of that list, you'll see global political instability. Only 14% of you at the time at which we did the survey indicated that that was a challenge. I think that number would be meaningfully higher if we had an opportunity to take a look at it today. How about employment? We see that 41% of you say that you are looking to hire people. You'd like to increase the size of your workforce. Only 3%, a relatively insignificant number, intend to cut back. So a ratio of 41 to 3 in terms of the percent who want to increase the size of their workforce relative to those who intend to decrease. Those numbers are similar upstate. About 44% of upstate CEOs intend to increase the size of their workforce. This is a little bit where the word but comes into the presentation. Unfortunately, when we said, turning to your impressions of Long Island's workforce, is there an ample supply of local workers that are appropriately trained for your employment needs? Only 19% of you said that that is the case. So only 1 out of 5 say that I can find the people I need to step in and make a fruitful contribution right away. So there is a search for those employees. That number was similar, slightly lower upstate at 13%. Interestingly, a year ago, that was 28 upstate, so we saw a drop. I'm getting the high sign. As far as the assessment, continuing the assessment of the workforce, many of you are having difficulty recruiting to fill open positions. Only about a third of you say that you are not having difficulty recruiting and retaining workers. And we show there the types of workers and the degree to which you are struggling to recruit and retain those workers. About 47% of you said that in order to recruit, you're offering higher wages, which also, as you well know, is a inflationary indicator. So not only are you facing inflationary indicators in terms of rising supplier costs, but your need to pay your employees more to both recruit and retain them is also a inflationary contribution. I'm glad that we're going to move through this quickly with so many members of elected officials here today. We ask about your relationship as CEOs with both the state and the federal government. About 27% of you believe that the state is doing a good job enhancing the business climate, looking to the future. About 30% of you are confident in their ongoing contribution. Turning to the federal government, we see similar numbers. And in both these cases, both CEOs' attitudes towards the state and federal government, we see that there is a request on the part of CEOs for the state and federal government to have a better understanding of the needs of CEOs who are doing business, the backbone of New York and Long Island's economy, and a sense that government simply doesn't quite always understand. There was also a great deal of sentiment in the survey about concern over various forms of regulatory activity. I'll move through this very quickly. We assessed CEOs' perception of the degree to which both state and federal government had effectively managed the COVID crisis, slightly better grades, about half feeling as though the state and federal government did a good or excellent job managing the COVID crisis. And clearly, COVID had a dramatic impact on your business. I'll call attention to your cost of doing business. 70% of you indicated that COVID increased your cost of doing business. And on the other side of that image, in terms of the price increases from your suppliers, about 2/3 of you indicated that you realized price increases from your suppliers as a result of COVID. Supply chain disruptions has also been an issue that has affected many of you over the course of the last year. About almost 60% of you indicated that it didn't have that dramatic effect. However, about 42% of you did say that was a problem for you. Looking to the future, about 28% of you indicated that you believe that the economic outlook is improving, 46% staying the same. So we have close to 2/3 to 3/4 of Long Island CEOs saying that conditions are at least staying the same, if not improving. That dovetails with this general sense of optimism. And noteworthy, when we asked if you had it to do all over again, would you do it here? And this is a dramatic number. 55% say absolutely. This is where I'm from. This is where I do business. These are the people I want to live with and do business with. And that number upstate is significantly lower. Upstate, that number is about 40%. But before I turn it over to the panel, let me just make a couple of other really quick comments. We were out yesterday with a survey about the economic impact of both inflation and the war in Ukraine on New York's consumers. As you well know, we are a consumer-driven economy. 70% of our economic activity traces its roots to consumers. At this point in time, 70% of New York's consumers feel that inflation is having either a somewhat or very serious negative effect on their personal finances, and they tell us that they intend to watch their spending. They are dramatically concerned, as are you, about increasing energy costs, increasing food costs. So in spite of this resounding optimism that was expressed in the survey, there are some bumps in this road to recovery that we are currently traveling. Add to that the war in Ukraine and the uncertainty that puts on each and every one of our desks and kitchen tables. And we face some challenges in this year ahead that, until these inflationary and political instability conditions, was dramatically optimistic. So I still feel as though we will see economic growth and vitality here on Long Island this year. But we all certainly are watching the war in Ukraine and its effects on economic outlooks. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Levy, for sharing the results of the Long Island Economic Survey and Opinion Poll. Oh, I don't know if I need that, and thank you for keeping us on time. And you didn't even miss a beat when I flipped a couple of your pages. Well, you weren't even looking, so thank you so much. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel. There is a bio sheet on each table, and I urge you to take a look through their individual resumes. I know you will be impressed by their many accomplishments. It is really quite a panel, and it's a diverse panel, which is really good and should give us a pretty good cross-section of the thoughts from different industries and different sectors. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Patrick M. O'Shaughnessy, President and CEO of Catholic Health Services. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rich Human, President and CEO of H2M Architects and Engineers, and an HIA-LI board member and current chairperson. Welcome, Rich. Kevin O'Connor, CEO of Dime Community Bank, and an HIA-LI board member. Welcome, Kevin. Dr. Edward Bonahue, President of Suffolk County Community College, and a new HIA-LI board member. Welcome, Ed. And we've already met Dr. Don Levy, Director at Siena College Research Institute. Welcome, Don. Now let's begin our discussion, and we always start with that first question. According to the survey, confidence on Long Island has increased from 6.5 to 6.8, and 59% of the CEOs feel the economic conditions on Long Island are better than a year ago, and 61% expect economic conditions to be better through 2022. I will say there's certainly an optimistic group, and I hope everybody else is. My former partner, John Shillingsford, when Don asked about optimism, or I think Terry did, he raised his hand to his shoulder, which tells me that he's extremely optimistic, the fact that he got it off his lap. Thank you, John. Hopefully everybody else feels the same way. So I asked this first question, and as Don said, the survey took place November, December into early January, and knowing that nothing in this world is static. So since the poll was taken, we've seen a conflict in Ukraine, a stock market correction, although I guess the last couple of weeks we've been back up a little bit, a quarter point rise in the interest rates with the promise of additional increases. Gas prices continue to spiral, and there's just an overall increase in inflation and a spike, and then a corresponding decrease in COVID-19 cases. So not to give anybody a pessimism about the economy, I'm going to ask each of you in your shortened version, what is your economic confidence rating? And I'll ask you for Long Island and for the national economy. So Dr. O'Shaughnessy, I'll start with you.
Thank you. So I would agree with the survey results. I think we're on a favorable trajectory. And if you think back, look through, what we came from with the lockdowns and with businesses being closed. Outside of my full-time job, I recreationally fly. I'm a pilot. I would have never thought in a million years I could take my little bug smasher and actually go into JFK and land. There was no air traffic. Everything was closed. So it's great to see everyone back around the table, to see businesses open. I was one of the proponents that felt we needed to continue to do that to spur the economy. Others, I think, felt the same way. So I think we're in a much better place. I get asked a lot of questions about one of the indicators relative to COVID's repetitive impact on businesses, the economy, et cetera. And I do believe we're past the worst of it. That does not mean that we may not get additional small blips and spikes, and we'll talk more about that later. But I do feel we're favorably moving forward, and I do see a variety of return. As businesses get busier, healthcare gets busier as well, and we had some significant declines in our volumes relative to transitioning through COVID. We're seeing that business come back, and I don't just mean sick care, I mean well care, and that's important. Screenings, keeping you healthy, getting you in, getting ahead of you having a problem that causes more of an impact. So I'm a half full glass guy. I believe we're moving forward in the right direction. That doesn't mean we're not going to have blips along the way, but I'm optimistic.
You want to give us a number?
I'm not going to commit to a number.
Okay. Do you know my former partner, John?
I do.
You must. Okay.
No one's going to hold you to it.
Don't hold me to a number.
All right.
They're only taping it.
Yeah.
They'll come back to haunt you.
Some of us are accountants, some of us are numbers guys, so we want numbers.
Let you
But
know about a
anyway,
number.
Rich, same question. for
Okay.
you.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Bob. So for me, I came into my own planning process for 2022 very optimistic, and I think when the surge hit, all of us felt that kind of knockback, and after a while, as the fatigue continues to impact all of us, making sure that we get up and dust ourselves off, I think is challenging. But I think that not only is our region resilient, on Long Island, but I think that as a country, we are resilient. Some of the challenges that we've all heard and read about, I think, are going to be kind of continuing obstacles for us. Energy is going to be an obstacle for us. And I think all of us need to recognize that, energy is not just about when you go to the gas station or when you're, getting your oil delivered to your house. We're still allowed to get oil delivered to the house, right? Yeah, we are. Okay, that's good. But the volatility in our strategy. When you have like a national energy strategy that continues to kind of tip on a scale, it creates uncertainty. And unfortunately, uncertainty turns into cost. And, how do we go about making sure we move ourselves forward when there is that kind of uncertainty? So I think that's an issue. Clearly, supply chain continues to be an issue. I had a conversation last week with one of our leading pharmaceutical manufacturers right here in the Innovation Park, and they're extremely concerned, and they're explaining to me how negatively impacted they are from a cash flow perspective, because they're laying out lots of money for ingredients, and if that one last ingredient doesn't come in, they're paying for ingredients, they can't finish their processing, and then they can't bill and collect money from whoever their clients are. I think all things that maybe have us feel a little more cautious than I believe we should. To me, the most significant element of optimism comes in the fact that as we go and recover, the commitment to infrastructure, the commitment to dollars coming from the federal government, although there's clearly an inflationary effect of that, but nothing moves us in a strong economic direction than a really robust investment in infrastructure. So the fact that government at all levels recognizes that, I think, is also important for us economically. So I'm still optimistic for 2022. I'm generally optimistic anyway. And I will give you a 7.
All right. I appreciate that. Listen, I'm a big believer in being optimistic, even if it's somewhat cautious at times, but I think you have to be optimistic. Otherwise, where else are you going?
You get out of bed.
Exactly. You might as well just stay in bed with the covers over you. Kevin?
Well, Bob, thank you. And I obviously didn't get the memo on the ties. I'm just going to tell you, I walked in today and saw that tie. I could usually count on you.
Sorry.
To echo a lot of what people said, I think where we might have been last fall and where we are today is different. I do worry about this. Obviously, we're a function as a bank of our customers, and they are saying all the things you're saying about supply chains, wage pressures. I think the idea of, the Fed raising rates. Why is the Fed doing it? Because they need to slow the economy down. Inflation is a problem. We want, whatever you want to talk about it. If you're the average Long Islander driving 20,000 miles a year, it's $2,500 a year that they're paying more than they were, just a couple of months ago. So that will have its impact. I think when you start to think about sort of optimism, I think if you go back to the conversation about upstate versus downstate, if you will, I think long term, we're going to do okay, but I think in the short term, we're going to have some blips. The idea of the Fed, what they're doing is basically to slow us down. And however they do it, if it's 6 rate hikes, 7 rate hikes, if they're going to do 50 basis points, their ability to navigate a soft landing does not have a lot of historical success. And so we may feel some pain along the way that might be necessary to end some of this sort of inflationary pressures, if you will. But so I will have to put a number on it. Again, I'll put a 6. But I think we're going to have some pain as we get through, maybe not the end of this year, but the early part of next year.
Things go in cycles, so we might be in a difficult cycle right now, but we've always pulled through it, and I think we will.
I do. I think
Ed, your comments?
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. So from the standpoint of education, I know that all of you know the last 2 years have been almost unimaginably difficult for educators in terms of our ability to engage students, in terms of our ability to continue student learning. All of us with kids at home have seen that, trying to keep our kids going. And for colleges, community colleges, universities, it's been a challenge as well. Turning the corner into this year, therefore, we are remarkably optimistic because we think that this really represents an opportunity for us to get back to some type of post-pandemic, endemic phase of where we're at. We know that our ability to engage students, to provide hands-on workforce training that replicates the conditions that students are going to find when they're on the job, our ability to partner with high schools, to partner with business, to be that really conveyor belt of talent into business is going to be supported by the continuing economic recovery, continuing recovery from COVID. So I'm at about a 7.5.
Love it, love it. Thank you.
Kevin's going to step down. Ed is going to.
Don, any final comments on?
I'll just add a couple more numbers to the conversation. That's my world.
Okay.
So fluid.
I will like you to remember the degree to which current conditions are affecting the members of your community, your customers, your clients. 80% of New Yorkers told us this past week that they are concerned about the cost of gasoline. And here on Long Island, that's extremely true. You get up and you get in your car in the morning, you pass the first gas station. You may not know what a gallon of milk costs. You may not know even what the value of your 401k is, but you know damn well how much gasoline costs. And when it goes up, you feel it in the pit of your stomach, and 80% of New Yorkers tell us that they're concerned about that. Similarly, 87% told us that they're worried about the cost of food. So those are weighing on people at a time when there was a certain degree of liquidity, not just on your balance sheets, but on the consumer's balance sheet. There was a little bit of extra money in people's pockets, but they're a little bit weary to spend it right now because of inflationary pressures and because of the uncertainty over the war in Ukraine. We'll know a lot more in the months to come, but 54% of New Yorkers told us last week that they currently believe that the war in Ukraine and the international response to it is going to have continuing economic impact, not only on the American economy, but on their personal finances for years to come. That's a question we'll return to as conditions unfold. But right now, your consumers, your clients are worried.
Thank you, Don.
You know, I'll just add one pivot to my previous comment, maybe bring a little bit of levity. I am a numbers guy, but numbers can change. But the one thing I would rate with a confidence interval of 10 is that each and every one of us will hit a pothole at some time in your journey. So I welcome the infrastructure investment that is needed on Long Island in our roadways. So
Most definitely. I agree. All right. Rich, the
Yes.
pandemic has certainly taken its toll on many businesses and many industries. According to the survey, 44% of respondents indicated their business is stronger, and 48% indicated that their business merely survived the pandemic. Most businesses had to make certain adjustments in those two to be in those two categories. What changes has the engineering industry had to make to survive and thrive, and what has your firm had to do to survive and thrive?
So I'll talk about year one and year two. I think in 2020, let me take a step back to 2019. 2019 was probably one of the best years we had as an organization. I think the architecture, engineering, environmental science industry had a really strong year in 2019. So we were poised to just keep the train going in 2020. So as the pandemic hit and all of us had to completely, beyond readjustment, come up with a new strategy on how we're going to do our jobs. And every industry was affected that way. For us in particular, the way that our business performs is we have people that design projects. So clients are now no longer available. Municipal budgets were completely pulled back. We had so many projects that were on the boards that just stopped. And I was at a point in mid-spring thinking about layoffs. I had already gone through and evaluated salary reductions across the board for all employees. And then we were successful on the PPP loan. So that was such a critical piece of being able to shepherd us through like the darkest time of the pandemic. So I ended up not having to lay off anybody. I then quickly reversed the reductions that I had made because you needed to make sure your business was going to survive. That was the most important thing. So during the course of 2020, even though we didn't quite have the work that we had the year before, we were able to maintain staff, but had to figure out how to do our business in a different way. But I think all the employees, if you engage them the right way, they all had the sense of all hands on deck. When you're in a crisis, people with good character step up in a crisis, and I felt like our employees really did. I felt like our industry did. But then as you moved into last year, you can't maintain that. You can't continue to kind of ride in crisis mode. So it was probably the first year in a decade that we were pretty flat as an organization. I was really optimistic, probably overly optimistic, because 2020 ended up being a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. So I was thinking, okay, great. We're just going to move ourselves forward. And 2021, I think, was challenging for us. Our biggest challenge, I think it has been a challenge, and it's going to be even more so, is for engineers, architects, scientists. The talent pool is tight, and I feel as though we're all not only competing for the same people that are available, but we're competing for each other's people. And when you do that, the leverage from a compensation perspective is heavily on the employee side. So we have been doing all sorts of things as an organization to create different levels of engagement with our people, because we need them to want to stay with us, and we need to be able to attract people that don't work for us to want to come and work for us. Salary pressure is about as tough as it's ever been right now, and going through our budgeting process, we're about a 500-person firm, and I could hire 100 people tomorrow with what our opportunities are. So our limitation this year and moving forward is all going to be about staff, and we're trying to be as creative as we can to address that issue. And I think the industry in general sees a lot of the same.
Definitely an employee's market, certainly. For retention, for hiring, no question about it. Kevin, I'm going to ask you this question, same backdrop. According to the survey, 44% of respondents indicated that their business is stronger, 48% indicated that they merely survived. What impact has the last 2 years had on the bank's customers, in a way of defaults, potential defaults, increase in loan or line of credit balances, or requests for additional financing? What have you seen as if any, fallout from the pandemic?
Well, it's funny, I listened to Rich, that sort of arc is what we're hearing from lots of customers. I think everybody sort of, 19 was a good year, and you think about 20 and you go into an optimistic, and then it hits. And then, that first couple of weeks, you didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, we came out with this emergency $50,000 loan just to people can make payroll and things like that. And then PPP comes along, and you realize that we were able to figure out how to run our businesses, trusting Optimum, which I never thought we'd be able to do. When I saw hundreds of computers going out the door and recognizing that was going to work, I was surprised. And then PPP comes out, and we're able to get funds in the hands of people, and they can keep their businesses running. They figure out how to do things remotely, although I don't know that we think that's sort of a long-term solution. 2021 was a long year because I think we all thought we'd be in a better place than we were. And so as we look at it, I'll just say this couple things. We did over 4,000 PPP loans. I think we have less than 20 where the businesses are no longer, we can find people now. So that would tell you that, as we talk about government programs and confidence in the government, that may be the A+ that they'll ever get in rolling that program out and what it was able to do. And it, for us, speaking selfishly, for us, it was an opportunity for our employees to come together and do things that they never thought they'd be able to do. But as we roll from 2021, we also put together 2 large companies in a merger, which was somewhat of a challenge remotely. But as we roll into 2022, we look at our customers now, it's their financial statements are a little confusing, as accounts in the room will say. It's, what was 2021 and 20? Was it a real good year? Was it not a good year? How much was PPP? And it does make sort of the lending process, but we are not seeing a big increase in defaults. We are still seeing people with lots of liquidity on their balance sheet. We struggle. We'd like you to use your lines. We make money when you actually borrow, and people are not doing it as much as they once did. And maybe because they don't have the inventory that's not out there because supply chain, the equipment that they want to buy is not there. It's good to hear everybody optimistic going forward. We, again, internally, as we now try to get everybody back to work, I appreciate my colleague over here is an educator, says he's excited because he's having people come back because that's how you educate. As an employer, when we're still fighting to get people back in the office, you recognize that they're missing something by not being there. We also face the challenges that we sort of have we have a front line of our branch people that are out there every day, have been out there every day. They can't work remotely. And then we've got sort of a support staff that does, and it creates sort of a challenge within our own organization that I'm very aware of, and we need to make that go away. We need to have a consistent approach the way we deal with our employees. And I'm sure other people here feel the same way. So it's, we've all learned there probably will be some level of remoteness. I think some of the digitization that we've did, our customers may not be coming into the branch. They're using a lot more. I almost think of our branches as we have 60 private banking offices today. So they spend more time answering phones and doing transactions than people in the branches. But, it's, again, looking forward to, the one thing I would say is that it seemed to me almost the Omicron surge and the fact that the hospitalizations didn't come out of that almost make people say, okay, as the next rounds come through, maybe not be as afraid as they once were. Would you agree, Doctor?
I would.
Yeah, it almost begs the next question. It's not the question I was going to ask, but it begs the question, what about the future? What about the next variant? Are we due to just get vaccinations every year? They recommend you get a flu shot every year. Is that really what you think might happen in the future to really keep people healthy and keep them out of the hospitals?
So my belief with COVID-19, let me say this. COVID is already endemic, okay? And that's not necessarily a scary term. Pandemic we went through that. Endemic means a virus or a pathogen will live at a low level globally and have periodic ups and downs, so to speak. I'm a big supporter of the vaccines. I think they've done wonders to reduce, to your point, the morbidity and mortality, but they're not bulletproof vests, right? People get breakthrough infections. The way to manage COVID and to create economic stability and to improve and sustain the health of our communities is to employ a multifaceted treatment. Yes, on the pre-hospital public health side, vaccines are very important, but we have to continue to invest and develop direct therapeutics to treat people that have early disease. Let me give you a statistic. I'm very proud of the work that Catholic Health has done. It's not my success, it's their success. Two of our hospital presidents are right here, Jim O'Connor and Ruth Hennessy from Good Sam St. Catherine St. Charles. We successfully treated over 14,000 Long Islanders who had COVID-19 and were hospitalized. But here's an even more impressive statistic that ties in with direct therapeutics. We treated 18,000 Long Islanders with monoclonal antibodies who flipped a positive test whether you were vaccinated or not, okay? And we prevented them from getting severe disease. They went home. They got better. Do you know that there's over 434 drugs in development to treat COVID coming? A fraction of those will go through clinical trials and come to market. Two of those drugs, Paxlovid and Molnupiravir, are available. They're developed, they're out, but we don't have enough of them. We need to get more of them. So for those of you who have had influenza, how many have had flu? Sometimes even when you have the flu shot, right? So what do? You call your doc and you say, Dr. O, give me a script for that pill. I won't name it, but there's an antiviral you take, right? You take it, you get better, and you move on. So I think it ties in perfectly with your comments because fear is a real deterrent in so many areas, both for healthcare and for economic growth. We have to follow the science, we have to follow the data, and we have to have a multifaceted approach. I think if we do that, what you're going to see is the fact that we will manage COVID in an endemic state. There are going to be people who will get breakthrough infection. We have to protect those most vulnerable, those at extremes of age and who are immunocompromised. This could be a cancer patient receiving chemotherapy, as an example. Relative to vaccines, I do think we'll pivot the technology. That's one of the benefits of the messenger RNA development products. I think, depending on what we see coming, we'll see probably further iterations of those vaccines be developed and be deployed. And then I think, folks will need to make determinations with their healthcare providers about what's the best course of action for them, given their personal health condition.
Thank you for your insight. One of the things I like about moderating is I get to ask the questions even on the fly that I want to hear the answers to. We will have a Q&A at the end, but if you want to get a sip of water, Dr. O, you touched upon a little bit about during the pandemic how people really weren't able or didn't go for routine care, didn't go for routine surgeries. What do you see as the impact now? I mean, now it's 2 years later. Certainly, it certainly affected many people. And I'm just wondering, in your eyes, your view, what has been the impact, short term, long term?
Short-term impacts have been economic. So healthcare is an incredibly high-cost chassis. I look to Charlie, he used to sit on a board, knows incredibly thin margins. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. We don't ask you your insurance status. We care for you. Doesn't matter. Your background doesn't matter. But reimbursements continue to go down. COVID put exceptional challenges on that, and a big book of our business has always been on screening and elective surgery and elective procedures to help keep people healthy. And that actually many times is at a lower price point, right? Because we do those in alternative settings, ambulatory care settings versus a hospital. Sometimes we can get to people early enough with screening where they need no significant intervention. I gave you the COVID example. The cost of infusion of a monoclonal antibody, keep it simple, $500 in one of our infusion centers by our emergency rooms. If you were seeking an emergency room visit, that could be $1,500. If you get admitted, it could be $15,000 or up. It's not insignificant. So I think when you look at screenings, when we shut down in those areas, I think it had a dramatic public health and population health impact, right? What are we seeing? We're seeing people with more progressive cancers being diagnosed, advanced cardiovascular disease that was missed. And I've always been a vocal component to say we need to continue to do that. People need to continue to get mammograms, sonograms, colonoscopies, those kinds of things. I'm not saying we should have kept elective procedures open for blepharoplasties or cosmetic procedures. I'm saying the real bread and butter of what keeps people healthy. And I'll always stand behind that because I think that's how we deliver the most exceptional value in reducing the overall cost spend. You know, when you look at it, it's estimated that our GDP percentage spend on healthcare, right, when you think about 20% by 2030, it's not sustainable. And it's because we're focused on managing severe chronic disease, which is the highest cost.
Thank you. Ed, I didn't forget about you. So you're going to get hit with a couple here. So according to the survey, 57% of respondents said they are having difficulty recruiting employees and probably retaining. In addition, the survey indicated that 62% of the CEOs say there is not an ample supply of work people trained for their needs. What needs to happen? I mean, we talk about this quite a bit. What needs to happen between education and businesses to get this coordination done?
We need to create a college-going culture that assumes that everyone coming out of high school needs some kind of post-secondary credential. There are very few things that you can do that are a pathway to middle-class, family-sustaining wages that you can do just with a high school education. So whether it's apprenticeship, whether it is a high-need, high-wage technical training, whether it is a one-year certificate or a two-year degree, we need to create the expectation that colleges for everyone, community colleges are among the highest quality, most value-oriented investments that a family can make. So when we think about the demographic changes that have come to Long Island, one of the things that I've shared with our Board of Trustees is that the 2020 census had some interesting implications for the way that we think about going to college. In 2010, Suffolk County had about a 28% minority population. Although the overall population of Suffolk County remained about flat, it grew slightly over the last 10 years. By 2020, Suffolk County now has a 37% minority population, with the vast majority of the increase being folks of Hispanic heritage, sometimes new Americans who have just come to the United States, sometimes folks who have come out to the city. But the reason that's important for thinking about the talent pipeline is that gives us more opportunities to train first-generation college students. But in the process, we often find that we have to explain the value proposition of going to college. So after you're done with your compulsory education, after you've done with free public education, sometimes we have to explain to families, why would I have to pay more money to go to college? Why would I have to pay? If education should be free. And we're trying to explain to families, this is an investment. This is an investment that you make in the future. Yes, you can go out and bring an income to your family right now, but over the long term, you want a credential recognized by industry. You want an education that will be, as I said, a pathway to the middle class. So what we have to do is create the expectation that college is for everyone. Everyone who, if you're new to this country, if your parent never attended college, that is part of what we need to do. And we need to partner with business to make that happen. So one of the interesting things about the employer survey was, what are all the things that we're doing to retain the employees that we have? And many of them, there's, Rich, you said the salary pressure is tremendous. We're stealing from each other. One of the things I want to kind of put out in front of us is that we need to retrain and help our own employees upskill. We as a community college want to partner with business so that we can add value to the employees you already have. So, of course, a main part of our business is working with traditional students who want to go to university, and we want to help them on that pathway, whether they're going to Farmingdale or Stony Brook or upstate or wherever it may be. But another part of what we do as a comprehensive community college is to provide workforce training. That can be customized training solutions for a company. That can be industry-recognized certificates in welding, machining. We're working with an HIA company to explore pharmaceuticals and life sciences. Whether it's customer service or sales training, we need to be in the position as a community college to be flexible and agile in ways that meet your needs and that allow you to keep the employees that you have, because that's a function of community colleges too.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important. It's just the communication between the business community and the colleges to find out what training they do need. So I think that's critical. I've been through in my career cycles with employees where some cycles it's an employer's market, some cycles it's an employee's market. Right now it's an employee's market. And I'm just thinking myself, and maybe the statistics are close or about the same, but they always talked about 10,000 baby boomers retiring a day. What is your sense with the colleges and the high schools? I would say the birth rates are probably down.
Correct.
College enrollment is down, and we've got all these baby boomers retiring. Who's going to fill that pipeline?
Right.
And will we ever get to an employer's market again? Or is it always going to be a struggle to find and retain employees?
So Don referenced some important differences between Long Island and upstate. We are seeing the number of traditional high school students on Long Island decrease modestly every year. So when we look at the projections that the SUNY Department of Education provides, the stark reality is that the number of students in high school goes down slightly in Suffolk and Nassau counties each year. Upstate New York, Don, it's considerably even worse, that the upstate counties are losing population, and actually some of the talent pipeline challenges that we see are exacerbated in other parts of the state. But this also means that we have an opportunity, as I said, to try to, in retaining the employees that we have, we need to understand that part of what's in the talent pipeline is adult learners, adult students. It's not just 18-year-olds. It could be, for instance, not just newcomers to the United States or newcomers, first generation and college students, but it may be the parents of those students who may be in a very entry-level, non-skilled job, but if they're a good worker, we need to get them some skills so that they can move up and add value in an organization. So I think if we're only looking at the most traditional students, we're selling ourselves short. We have to be thinking kind of vertically about all the places where we can add talent and provide workforce training.
So do you
Bob,
think?
can I add something to the point?
Okay.
From a business perspective. Now, whether or not it ever becomes an employer's market again for talent, who knows? But clearly, any business that is not continuously reflecting on the things that we need to do to adjust in order to recognize, the current state of the talent market that we're in, you're going to be left behind. There's no doubt. I talk to people who are maybe a little bit older than I am. And, there are those of us that have all had experiences where somebody would say, you're lucky you have a job.
Yeah.
If that's your mentality today, you are going to die as a business.
Exactly right.
So, we all need to do ourselves a favor and make sure that we're constantly evolving to recognize the fact that if your people are your greatest asset, you have to be willing as a business to change your business as opposed to forcing your people to change because you say, this is just how we run our business.
Yeah. I think over the years, some of my partners, former partners, Joe, Jeff, John, they always heard me say that employees can always go somewhere else and make more money. Yes. Throughout my career, I've always said that. And they may have to go to the city, they may be inconvenienced, or they may just seek a better opportunity, but there's got to be reasons why they stayed at ABZ. And one of the reasons was culture. You treated them properly, you were there for them. And, I think that's so important. And, if employers don't recognize that, like you said, they're going to be left behind. Well, they're going to be doing all the work themselves, and they're going to have no leverage and be limited on what they can do. So I agree.
There's also the issue of while we have our employees and we think we need to go outside for them, using organizations and institutions like Suffolk to continually learn, right? I mean, the idea is that, you call it college, and some of it's how you define college.
Exactly.
Right? It's really post-secondary learning.
Exactly.
If we use that term, it encompasses a much broader spectrum. Because you say college, and sometimes you might scare people if they think it's liberal arts.
Right.
And I'm not sure liberal arts is for everybody. But at some point, the things in the program Suffolk offers and other institutions can offer that basically is more encompassing and brings people and provides sort of the education that gets you into the workforce, maybe quicker than 4 years. It gets you in the workforce. It trains you to walk in with those skills.
Thank you for your comments. Rich, I don't mean this to be a lightning rod, so don't even touch the first part of this.
Feel
But
free.
according to the survey, approximately 70% of respondents feel that the state and federal governments have done a fair to poor job in creating a business climate and don't feel confident that they will see an improvement in this area in 2022 for them to succeed. I was surprised that the percentage is so high. I thought the climate was beginning to change, at least where I live and work. I've seen some changes. So what is the biggest challenge you face when it comes to working on projects on Long Island?
To me, I would parse the sentiment. Clearly, there's a perception of federal, state, local government, and to me, local government on Long Island partners with business, partners with industry, tries to do everything it can to create a marketplace where they're supportive of business and they're supportive of all the things we have to do to invest in our own economic growth here. I think, as you continue to, kind of go up the food chain and get further away from local government, that's where there's no way I would believe that, government is there to, partner with business. I think they view business as a place to get money. And, the better we do, the more money we should give to government. Local government does not work that way, thank goodness. And I think, even if you talk about the last 10 years, there has been such a shift in local government's perspective in what they're responsible for. And, we all, I'm sure, have our own experiences where we would see a fantastic project coming, and if there was a small enough group of opposition, local government would take a complete step backwards and say, oh, we can't go forward with this. I think that there's so much more political will that exists now, where if there's a really important project needs to be done, even if there is a small group of opposition, let's communicate with those people, let's educate those people, let's get them on board. And if they don't, we're still going to make a decision that the project is in the best interest of our community. So I'm happy with the approach that local government takes in terms of being committed to economic growth and being committed to projects. And frankly, if federal government can work like local government, that would be awesome. But it doesn't quite work that way. So I'm pretty happy with our local approach. Yeah,
I would agree. I think you've seen definitely a very positive change in climate that's more pro-business. I think you can at least talk to them, and you could sit down with them and reason with them. And I think many of them get it now. I really do. Not so sure on the federal level. I'm with you there. Kevin, mergers and acquisitions, will we see an uptick? I mean, certainly we saw that even in our firm clients with mergers and acquisitions. Probably, other than banks in the last 2 years, probably has slowed down a bit. Do you think we'll see an uptick at all with M&A going forward?
Well, I think you will. I mean, obviously there has been a number of bank acquisitions, and there'll probably be less of them because there's less banks to get together. But certainly we've seen it in our client base, whether it be the age of the business owner, whether it be the family status, whether it's just the idea that there is lots of money flowing through private equity and that's looking for places to park. Whether we want to think about it or not, our geography, whether you include Brooklyn and Queens, we're the 15th largest state in the country, in a very, very concentrated area. There's incredible wealth. The per capita income is high here. And so businesses from outside, or money that's from the outside, flows here to look for opportunities. So I think we continue to see that. I think that there was a question, I guess, along the way about real estate values. Many of our business owners are sitting on incredible value in the real estate that they own, their factories, their facilities, and that sort of prompts this. So I definitely think you will see more of that going forward. And maybe it's just a commercial for Long Island. A lot of these organizations are part of roll-ups, where somebody comes in, private equity comes in and buys, and in many cases, a Long Island business, and uses some of that embedded management to be part of the team that's going to roll forward up, because I think that they look at sort of the people that have succeeded here, and I say this all the time, in that survey, this is always the hardest place to do business, but somehow we're always successful. So I think that you'll continue to see a lot of that.
Thank you. Dr. O, what role should government play in providing Americans with health care? And what role should the market play?
Did you say lightning rod?
Yeah. I mean, I've never met you before, so you seem to have some really good insights. So, and you're not other than giving us a number on your confidence level. You're certainly opinionated.
So let's unpack that a little bit. I mentioned the GDP spend. Tying that into workforce, by the same 2030, we could be 300,000 physicians short, 1 million nurses short to care for us. Who's going to care for us? Ed, there we go. So you know where we're going programmatically. But so how do we, building off of your comments, incent more young folks to go into the healthcare profession? It is a multifaceted, multi-step process because the burning platform for us, the oil rig on fire, is really our workforce. And so I do think government can play a role in how they look at programmatic support to help build and sustain the healthcare workforce. On the policy side, I actually think there needs to be greater clinical and administrative involvement in public health councils. to give feedback. I would share Rich's comments. I think we have an amazing group of electeds here on the island. They're open, they're receptive, they listen. But perhaps at the federal level and others, again, I think we all need to look ourselves in the mirror and say, just, how can we do a better job? How can we move away from fear? How can we follow science? So you have to get the right people around the table. And I believe knowledge and science should help drive policy, not policy drive science. So I think there's a greater opportunity to just communicate and to connect. And what did we learn coming out of COVID? In terms of payment and how we're going to do that, you heard me mention earlier about the fact that reimbursements continue to go down. Medicare and Medicaid, I'm excited by Governor Hochul's proposal for $10 billion of investment in the healthcare space. I think it's needed, and I'm hoping that that continues to move forward as the budget process matures. But I do believe the free market plays a role. I'm not a fan of single payer. I think we need to work to pay for value, okay? And that's where we're in this, one leg of the canoe is in a fee-for-service model, one leg of the canoe is in a value model. I'm not a fan of capitation. For those of you who know what that means you're paid 1X amount for the entirety of care for a population. But I do believe in right care, right place, right time. And I do believe while free market should drive decision-making, we need to think about some guardrails in areas that do give me concern, not just as a healthcare professional and a CEO, but as an employer. We have 16,000 healthcare heroes working in our organization. They're amazing people. But when I look at the healthcare expense of our self-insured plan, it's astronomical. It's not the hospitalizations, it's the drug cost. And if you look at some of the profitability that's been posted recently with major commercial payers, especially coming out of COVID, we have to begin to address that. So I do think government could help in being more involved in putting some guardrails on that. And again, I do believe in a free market economy, but I don't think single payer is the answer. And I think we need to shift the way we pay to pay for value. And if we do that, you'll see we not only bend the disease curve, but we begin to bend the cost curve.
Thank you. Thank you. Ed, it's a question that I'm always curious about. I know when I came out of college, I felt like I was ill-prepared for the real world. And I just wonder, at the college level, what are the colleges doing to prepare students, not just academically, but for the realities of what it's like to work in the real world? And you could touch a little bit upon, and as a firm, AVZ and now PKF, I mean, we've used interns, college students for probably 25 years, and I think, A, it's been good for us as a company, and B, I think it's been phenomenal for students. So I'm a big proponent of internships, but what are the colleges doing, and what can they do further to prepare students for the real world?
Absolutely. So, and thank you for sponsoring the internships, because that's certainly part of the answer. In our career-facing programs that are leading to employment, what we're most passionate about is trying to be sure that every one of those programs embodies the practices and requires the knowledge and skills and competencies that these future employees are going to face when they're on the job. And actually, the medical model is a good way of thinking about it. We don't graduate a nurse who hasn't spent hundreds of hours on the floors of the hospitals, going through different rotations, doing all the clinical competency checkoffs. And that's the approach that we are striving to be sure is in every one of our career-facing certificates or degrees. In my opening comments, I referenced that it's been very hard to do that during the past 2 years. You can do a large amount with simulation, with virtualization, but it's not the same as getting a student into a specialized facility, putting their hands on equipment, working in teams face-to-face, and the complicated interpersonal dynamics of teamwork. So whether it's on the facility side, the equipment side, the internship side, we try to be sure that what we're doing is far and above just a theoretical or academic introduction to a discipline, but that it's a hands-on, practical kind of education. The other piece that goes along with that is we rely on business to give us guidance on curriculum, outcomes, the labor market, how the business is changing, and so forth. I think for too long, academia has been telling business, oh, we'll tell you what you need to know. We'll tell you how to run our business. Quite honestly, we got to flip that. We can't run a strong business program. We can't run strong allied health or manufacturing or skilled trades programs without strong advisory boards, boards of employers who tell us what needs to be in the curriculum, how equipment is changing, how competencies are changing, where the market is headed, how our graduates are doing after they graduate, how we should, and several of us have referenced this, how we need to stack completion points that make sense for students and employees. So in the healthcare sector, maybe we start with short-term entry-level certificates, and then as students complete those, we add on additional competencies, additional certifications, so that students can earn while they learn. You can retrain while you retain. You see, I got all the lines.
Well prepared, I like that.
Thank you. But that idea of a sequence of completion points that are aligned with the marketplace, sometimes we refer to this as stackable credentials, is also got to be key to the way that education partners with business to be sure that our programs are really providing what employers need.
Thank you. So we've got 5 minutes before Q&A, so I'm going to give each of you a short amount of time for final closing comments. Don, we'll start with you.
Well, I just have been enjoying the panel. Appreciate being invited here, and certainly invite you all to visit our website and take a look at the full palette of work that we're doing. One thing that I think that we do and we seek to provide is a hands-on assessment of the lived experience of New Yorkers across their economic, social, and political realities. So it's a pleasure to serve Long Islanders and to serve the people of New York in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
So I invite everyone in this room to join with us at Suffolk in terms of making the value that we bring as a pathway to educational and economic opportunity visible to all of our communities and to your employees. And we can do this, as we've referenced, in a couple ways. Whether it is upskilling and retraining and adding to the skill set of employees that you already have, then that's an area where we want to partner with you. Whether it is helping your employees on the pathway to their first college degree. It could be a 2-year degree that they're then going to bridge into a 4-year degree. That adds value to your company. That's another place for us to partner with you. As all of you are active in the community, and as you are doing outreach and community development, this is an area where we are all invested in the quality of life and in being sure that Suffolk County understands the educational resources that we have here. That's an opportunity for us. Quite honestly, one of the fascinating things is that if you look at the enrollment of many of the upstate SUNY colleges, what county is their #1 supplier of students? You bet. So we send more students to Purchase and Cortland and not just the big universities, but even the state colleges. And we have a great asset right here in Suffolk County. And you know what? If you're taking chemistry, I would much rather you take it at Suffolk Community College in a classroom with 20 students rather than in an auditorium with 200 students somewhere else. I'd much rather you take it with a faculty member who knows your name and wants to work with you personally rather than someone who is trying to move on to their next research project. That's the kind of value that we're trying to add to the community at Suffolk.
Thank you, Ed. Kevin?
Well, as a trustee of Suffolk and a graduate, maybe I'll take my time to advertise for you too. But I think as I look around the room, it's great to see everybody full size, not in little boxes. But the opportunity, the conversations that we're all having are issues that we're all dealing with, right? And so we're all trying to figure out how do we navigate from where we were to where we're going. Certainly, I wish I was in the 7.5 range. I do worry a little bit of sort of just it's going to be manufactured to slow us down a little bit. But I do think that there are lessons that we'll take from this pandemic. I think some of the work from home things or learn from home fits in a little bit with what you're talking about, sort of that continuous learning process. Again, our ability to have navigated, the stronger companies that survived are in a better place. We have created, I think, a more awareness of sort of, I think it's at certain times when things are all wonderful, we don't step back and look at some of the things that really aren't good. And I think at a point in time, this has made us step back and sort of take stock of how we were running our organizations, what our role in the organizations. I think the conversation about local governments, I mean, I would not want to tell Angie Carpenter no on something, certainly. She's gone, but, or even all the other supervisors. That partnership of local government with business, with having somebody from the educational industry, if you will, because I'll just say that, participate here and listen and want to provide solutions, makes us in a better place than I think we were in 19, candidly, as we look in the future.
Thank you, Kevin. Rich?
Thanks, Bob. First, I want to thank you and your team at PKF. And you've been doing this, I think you said, for 27 years.
Yes.
This is such a public service benefit that you provide, and you do it because you're completely committed to our region here on Long Island. And I really appreciate all the time and effort, because I know it's tremendous what you all do. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
I think for all of us that are running businesses, there's never been a thicker world of gray that we're all operating in right now, and gray is uneasy and gray is uncomfortable. And you'd love to be able to make decisions in your business and say, okay, great, that's done, I don't need to worry about it again. But we worry constantly. We worry about our people. We worry about our financial health. We worry about the impacts we make to the community. The world's only going to get more and more complicated, and running a business is only going to get more and more complicated. And I think that, those of us that are willing to just accept that we are going to be constantly relooking at ourselves and reflecting and acknowledging when we make a bad decision for a certain reason, but not be afraid to make the next decision, is really going to continue to drive us through. And I think that one of the reasons why we are confident here on Long Island is because we just have great businesses and great business leaders here.
Thank you, Rich. Dr. O?
Thanks, Bob, and thanks again for the opportunity to be here. At Catholic Health, we believe we are Long Island healthcare, and we're a different healthcare system. Yes, we have the latest and greatest technological advances and amazing clinicians, but we also really embody the totality of the person and care for all people, body, mind, spirit. I'm very passionate about changing the delivery system in healthcare. I believe we do it. We will be making significant investments in our infrastructure here on Long Island. Good Samaritan alone will get over $500 million of capital investment into a brand new patient care pavilion. The other hospitals will follow. We're making other investments in our ambulatory sector. You could literally go right down the block to 500 Comac Road and see what the future of healthcare will be. So I invite all of you, and I am excited to partner with you to help you improve the health and wellness of your corporations and your employees. I realize in the past you may not have seen much of us. You will now, and I'm excited to partner with you in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is time to open it up to any questions from the audience. Anyone?
Good morning. Beth Meixner, Moxie Mentoring Foundation. To our college panelists, we've been mentoring college students since 2010, many of them international. They come to Long Island College for their education. When they graduate, most of them want to stay, but they need companies to sponsor them, so I ask all of you to please do that. And thanks to Zoom, we've been able to mentor those girls virtually through Zoom from Kazakhstan, Guyana, and Rwanda for the last year. So Zoom has really made us global. All the students are happy to be back on campus. They were not getting the learning and the socialization that they need, so they're very happy. We've been mentoring some of H2M, BMBs, and now Dimes employees for years, so thank you for that. So my question is to the CEOs, how do you balance the wants and needs of a CEO who wants their employees back in the office with now the employees who have seen the light of a better life and working part-time from home? What do you do?
You go first.
It's not easy. It really is not. And I think, we're trying to get people back. We've gone to the 2 and 3 day sort of splits. But I eventually think we will have most people back, but there will be the occasional sort of Fridays and things like that. And as I said earlier, though, the problem is we have a business model that has a number of employees that have to be there every day. And so I don't think long-term you can have sort of two different groups of employees. So I'm one of those people, and I think your conversation about, education needs to be in person. Well, our workforce is being educated every day. And so I think there's been a loss for a lot of our young employees not being mentored, not having that interaction, not having that impromptu conversation, not sitting in a room where a conversation's happening that you're learning from the two other people speaking. So if you think about this, I think as we've all learned, we learn through osmosis, and that's not happening through the little box from your basement.
So I agree with everything that Kevin said, and I think that for all of our businesses, just embracing the fact that we know that we can now do it. When we first started, it was really under emergency situations, and you've got, a healthcare system. I don't know how people can do their job from home when they're treating people. So I'm sure that there's a completely different perspective from Dr. O, but we've now leveraged it into a benefit. And not every employee wants to work from home, and not every employee wants to work 5 days a week in the office. So it's another one of those areas where if you're willing enough to adapt your approach to your business and make it about an employee benefit, it's another important way of keeping a hook in your people and reassuring them that you care about them and the things that affect them in their lives outside of your business. So we're adopting that now. We have adopted that, and I think that's going to be just another part of business moving forward, is another way to satisfy your people and allowing them to have a greater work-life balance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, Bob Arnold from Arnold Standard. Thank you all for sharing your time and your insight. Dr. O, I know I spoke to you beforehand, and speaking to the future of healthcare and how it's delivered over the last 20 years or so, right? We've lost 500,000 hospital beds nationwide, and here on Long Island, what used to be 23 hospitals, right? Brunswick closed, but 22 independent hospitals are now part of a system. There's none left. Going forward, and we spoke a little bit about the systems communicating, collaborating. Do you see the systems merging either here on Long Island or across the country?
So it's interesting, there was a conversation around M&A, and healthcare has gone through considerable consolidation from a mergers and acquisition perspective, and there's a minimum base threshold for size and scale that's needed for viability, right? At Catholic Health, we're well beyond that. I think we've done well integrating our delivery system to provide the very best of care across all platforms. When you look at the changes in independent single-loan hospitals, it just becomes an economic challenge to continue to make those things work and to be viable. So I do think you very well in the future, you may see additional merger and acquisition and consolidation. I think the Long Island market is though stable now. And everyone knows the players in the space, right? So if you're a standalone, you don't really exist anymore. There is strength in being part of a system. The second part of your question around how we better work together, I think is a very important learning point that came out of COVID. When we spoke earlier, I shared with you that I worked 9/11, and I was at the World Trade Center for about 2 weeks after that event. And what I saw was everyone in the city coming together and working together. And I see that now with COVID. But my fear is that as COVID kind of recedes and becomes more of a nightmare, I won't say a memory, but we may slip back. So I think there is ways that we can better manage bed capacity and utilization, whether we're working, say, with Stony Brook or Northwell or NYU, to make sure patients get access to the care they need, especially in a time of crisis, right? I mean, we all very proudly display our banners, but we're human beings first, right? And so I want people to get access to the care they need in the most appropriate site of service, even if it's not our own system, right? So I think we've made some improvements there in how we electronically connect, but we're still not there yet. And I think part of the reason is we haven't yet fully connected between systems our electronic health records, or at least have access where we could share data so we can get a better sense. You know, there's always some fear in doing that, but I think we have to take what we went through with COVID, learn from it, and think about how we could help each other to better serve the communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, but only if it's a softball question.
All right.
Well, I'll let you decide that. So I'm going to ask about women in the economy. And, you know, many of us are juggling kids and jobs, which is hard enough as it is, and it was even worse during the pandemic. So I'd like to hear some of your learnings during the last 2 years and share them with the audience in terms of working with, you know, your women at all levels of your organization, and share with us some of the things that you learned that you can carry forward.
I'll start.
Very easy. Thanks, Ed.
I think before COVID, many higher educational institutions were so traditional that we presumed that every student had the privilege of being able to drop whatever they were doing and come to college and take Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes from 11 to 11:50 because they had no other obligations. One of the things that we were forced to learn in COVID is that our Long Island families have all kinds of obligations, whether they're our work, whether they are taking care of elders, taking care of children, whether there are family obligations, whatever they may be. Many times it is moms who have taught us that. Many times it is, sometimes it's dads, and often it's working folks who say, look, I want to be in your program, but I can't get there on Tuesday, Thursday in the middle of the day. So I think one of the things that we continue to learn is that we need to embrace all of the potential talent, even though it's not really represented on this panel. And whether that means acknowledging the role of women in leadership and acknowledging that in many of our families, the special responsibilities and burdens carried by women who are both working and primarily providing for families as well, whether that's also mentoring and supporting women in minority-owned businesses. That's also become a major area of emphasis for us. We need to take advantage of all of that.
Thank you. If no other comments, I will turn the program over to Anthony Forgione.
So I was actually going to tell you to do that. So I tell you, these economic panels get better and better every year. So let's give a hand for this wonderful panel and our wonderful moderator. By the way, the hard copy is going to be on a table in the front. You can pick it up on your way out. I want to thank everyone for coming. I will say we have a couple of events you should know about, April 29th is our Long Island Innovation Park at Hop Hog program. It's going to be a panel, similar type of format. May 26th is our trade show, and then on April 7th, we are having an executive insight with Mr. Dolan in his new facility at Newsday. So once again, thank you. Thank our panel. This was great.
Great job. Wonderful meeting.
Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you.
Great panel, great panel. I was going to say this is one of